And greetings, fellow Business Central travelers. Let's see if audio is good. Okay, I think we have good audio. Looks like we have good video. So, greetings. It has been a while, and I don't know when the last stream was, but it's been several months at least since I've done one of these. And it's been busy. I think November and December was a blur of cold after cold after cold. If you have kids, you understand the challenge. And then I went to El Salvador in November for 2 weeks, and then we had holidays and then more travel. Then I went to El Salvador again in January. So here we are, February 17th. Time is flying. So, and I apologize. I caught a second round of everyone's favorite global virus. So I'm fine, but the cough just pops in randomly. Okay, so let's talk about conferences. It is conference season coming up the next several months. And April, we have Directions NA 2024, and I'll just mention a couple of conferences that are coming up. This one is for North America. It is at the Sheraton San Diego Hotel. Beautiful location. San Diego is a beautiful place. I am not 100% sure that I'm going to be there, but I am considering it. It is designed for Dynamics partners. So it is not an end user conference. It's a partner-oriented conference, slightly different content and technical focus, things like that. Covering Business Central, primarily Business Central, but discussing AppSource, ISVs, and some Power Platform content, as well as Azure Consulting and Development, the agenda says. And if you are interested in attending that in April, go to directionsna.com. Next up, we have DynamicsCon Live 2024. And I will be at this one. I was on the content planning committee for Business Central. We had a ton of session submissions. Thank you so much. We had to filter them based on the number of slots we had. We did have a lot more slots this year, but we still had to only choose a subset of the submissions. But thank you all who submitted. And that is going to be Monday, May 13th through Thursday, May 16th. Monday is just more the arrival and registration and reception day. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is the main content presentation sessions, keynotes, things like that. That is in Denver at the Denver Marriott Tech Center. And it's a very nice area. And the huge news is apparently the attendance goal this year is 2,000 attendees. And if you've been to the prior DynamicsCon Lives from day one, you realize what a just massive growth the conference has experienced, huge interest, great sponsorship, tons of session submissions, great tracks, BC, CE, F&O, GP, Power Platform, and we had a lot of scenarios where it's like, well, there's BC and Power Platform, or there's CE and whatever. And so it's kind of the blend of the different products. So we have a full cross-product option for many sessions that involve different products and a mix of, say, Azure and CE. So some really interesting sessions that don't fit into a typical single track or single solution-based track. So it's going to be a fantastic conference. However, it has been so, the registrations and the hotels have gone so quickly that the Marriott is filled up, but there is a new room block at the Hyatt Regency just down the street. I think it's just walking distance, like leisurely walk across a parking lot or down the street. So there will be shuttles as well if you want that. But if you're looking for a hotel, Hyatt Regency Denver Tech Center. And let me just get you a discount code. I apologize, I forgot that. So this is a real-time live stream here. Let me just pop that on the radar. And let's see if I can add this. Look at this. Oh, why is it white? Okay, so discount code Steve MVP 15, and I believe that fancy pants code will get you 15% off of your registration. I think we're past early bird registration. So use Steve MVP 15. There are a few other discount codes out there, but I'd be honored if you'd use mine. So anyway, check that out. Join us in Denver in May. It's going to be a fantastic time. And of course, I will be there. Next up, I believe it is the second annual Dynamics Minds 2024 conference, or second annual Dynamics Minds, this year being 2024. And the official conference is Monday, May 27th through Wednesday, May 29th. They have a pre-day on Sunday, May 26th. And I didn't look to see what the pre-day was for, if it was for training or workshops or what, but just be aware of that. The early bird registration ends February 29th, so just 12 days ago. So if you are in Europe, if you're keen to head over to Slovenia, go check it out. It looked like a really fun conference last time. They apparently cover BC, CE, F&O, and Power Platform. Sounds similar to the DynamicsCon Live focus. And that is at dynamicsminds.com. Looks like a really fun, clever theme. Looks like they had a great time last year. So check that out if you are in Europe. And I'm told it is beautiful. And you can even do a road trip around that area if you want to turn it into a vacation or a family gathering. Okay, so those are a few conferences. There are more that are coming on later in the year, but register if you happen to be able to go. And I would just like to thank Natalie, our community BC Docs librarian. If you do not know who Natalie is, I don't know where you've been for the last few years, but head on over to Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, I don't know where you've been the last few years, get on Twitter and follow Natalie at, I apologize if I'm saying this wrong, at Carolac Natalie. She is our official, I'm making it official, she is our official BC Docs librarian. And as you see in her Twitter profile, Waldo very appropriately asked, can you please change your name into BC Docs and GitHub and the rest of the internet librarian? I fully agree. I fully endorse that promotion to full internet librarian because she has some banger tweets where you ask a question and bam, she drops BC Docs in your feed. Like, you're just like, how did you do this? So someone else mentioned Jeremy Viska's API book, which we'll get to. I mentioned that I had just used his API book. This is back in November. And she dropped this in the reply. She saw it. She pulled up the URL and she says, hey, FYI, guys, this is full MS Docs on the Business Central API. Now, I don't know if I knew this. I don't know if I forgot it. I didn't know it was as available as what she provided. And I'll show you the examples of the content. And I'm like, I just didn't realize it. So she is constantly reminding me of resources that are available and documentation and information and just invaluable stuff that is really, really helpful. So thank you, Natalie. Cheers. Hope we meet someday. I blame the coffee for that one. But the cough doesn't help. Okay. Next up, speaking of BC Web API. So this is the resource that she shared with me. There's the full URL. It's a bit of a mouthful. So go on over there to steveendo.link/BCAPI with a handy dandy QR code that'll take you right there as well. And This is the MS Docs or MS Learn Business Central documentation for the BC Web API v2.0, not to be confused with the many other, excuse me, many other web services, OData. Jeez. Okay. Not to be confused with the many other BC web services. I'm going to have to edit all of this out for the podcast. And what is on these pages? Well, one, what I love, there is a field by field description of what's in this API. But what I, as a developer, like to go to is like whatever list of field names. I want to see the JSON payload. Like right away, this tells me exactly what I want to know, what fields are there, what the data type is, and if I'm working with another developer who needs to connect to the BC Web API, in my experience, this is what they want to see. Now, unfortunately, we do not have Swagger or Swashbuckle or, the Open API spec for publishing this and making it interactive and testing. And if you've used Swagger, you know how amazing it is. But this is the best we have at this time. So check it out. Super valuable. Just saves tons of time. And let's see, what else do I have here? And one of the things that I didn't even realize, I was just browsing this yesterday and I was like, wait, what is that? Bound actions. I probably knew about this at one point a couple years ago, like when I took AJ Kaufman's API class, but I totally forgot that Business Central Web APIs had something called a bound action. And in this case, this is talking about a journal. So a journal resource type offers a bound action called posts, which posts the corresponding journal batch. Now, coming from the Dynamics GP world, this is just flat out amazing. This is just magic, voodoo, whatever you want to call it. We just didn't have this capability in the Dynamics GP world, just due to the architecture of the on-prem application. To have a bound action that posts a journal in Business Central via an API call, pretty crazy. So I'm going to start looking into this, do some prototyping, testing, and include this. And I just hadn't looked at it lately. So definitely check out some of this documentation. You may be familiar with it, but when you read it, I guarantee you'll say, wait, did I know that? I don't remember that. That's new. And just really simple things. So once again, thank you, Natalie, for reminding me of those resources. And an alternate resource that I mentioned is Jeremy Viska's book. So if you go on his website, sparebrain.com, Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central API reference. This is an ebook that you can purchase. He might have a physical hard copy book you can buy. I just purchased the ebook, and it is a fantastic PDF reference that I also keep handy. And once again, I typically refer to the API references like this for the JSON payload. So here we see a little more complete and realistic looking payload because it has the OData context gobbledygook. It's got the E tag, it's got the ID. And in this case, I happen to be looking for the external document number for this. I believe this is a sales order. Yeah. So there you go. So this is what I typically jump to with the API references. Now, one unique thing about Jeremy's book that is not readily available in the MS Learn or BC Docs reference online, is he has full screenshots of every field that the API touches. And if you've had to deal with this, you know the value of this. So sometimes the field in the API is not named the same as the field that you may see in the Business Central user interface. Now, in this particular one, it's pretty straightforward, and these are generally one-to-one. However, there are a few fields and a few data types or few objects where it does not match, and you will be digging through your data in BC or testing your API with all sorts of permutations to figure out which field you're going to populate to get it in the right place in BC. So there's one very valuable portion of Jeremy's book there. And so I was on a call yesterday, I believe, Friday, and two of the fields the customer wanted to use were your reference and work description. Unfortunately, we can immediately tell from Jeremy's book, neither of those fields are listed in the sales order API endpoint. So we immediately knew, okay, we're going to have to do a custom API in order to accommodate those additional fields. So just knowing that up front, so you're not caught off guard when you're 3 weeks into a project, makes you look bad. So that's why you should pick up these resources, invest in them, and learn from them. And speaking of APIs, we are starting a project. This is a new BC implementation. Customers migrating from another ERP system, and the customer happens to be in the transportation and logistics industry. And I've worked with transportation and logistics customers for, since 2005, 2006, something like that, and in the US. And it is shocking how complex their internal systems are, because they, at least in my experience, they run very industry-specific solutions. And the ERP system takes a back seat. It is a secondary concern for them overall as a business. They have, in this case, a SaaS operational system that's used for a major portion of their operations of their business. Then they have an internal operation systems that handles all sorts of other things. And then they have a fully outsourced SaaS AP automation that is industry specific. And I've worked with this company for 10 years now. I have, I think, 15, 20 customers in the United States that use this transportation and logistics AP automation system and integrates with ERP. And then they have a revenue management system that deals with all sorts of commission-related things and rebilling and margins and pretty complex stuff. And then there's the poor little ERP system off to the side who's kind of like receiving this information secondhand, like, oh, by the way, you might want to know about this. All of these systems, I didn't even bother to draw arrows because I'd have to draw way too many arrows. It would just be this crisscross of lines. All of these systems interact. And so we are going to have a whole slew of API integrations with Business Central in order to get all these systems to talk together. So that's the value of APIs. That's the importance of APIs. So definitely stay current on your BC API documentation, because once you walk into a customer like this, you're going to need to be able to pull that information up quickly and be on your toes to answer those questions. And on a related note, or a slightly different note, one of the things that we've been working on with a customer since, I think, October, is a relatively small company. They migrated from NetSuite to Business Central. And it's due to the nature of their business, NetSuite changed their licensing model. My understanding is NetSuite now charges based on the number of database records or transactions. I think it's records that are inserted or added to the database. And if you have a high volume, high transaction volume, high line count, you can have astronomical costs for using NetSuite, independent of the size of your business. So in this case, this is a relatively small company, but they have very high transaction volume with low dollar amount on any given line item or transaction. These are low dollar amount, lower margin items, but just very high volume. So NetSuite was just insanely expensive. Business Central saved tens of thousands of dollars a year. And one interesting thing about this customer is they do daily orders to all of their customers, and their customers can have 20, 40, 60 different locations that get deliveries. And so lots of activity. but they only invoice the customer monthly, one invoice. And we thought, okay, no problem. Well, when they went live at first, they started to process these full invoices, and they discovered the entire invoicing process from A to Z for one customer, one invoice at the end of the month took over 3 hours to complete the entire sequence of steps in Business Central. And we thought, what is going on? Like we tested the process, but now that they're live, we're uncovering this kind of strange performance issue, capacity issue. Well, turns out we didn't know the scope of this at the time. We knew that given the amount of orders, they might have a few thousand lines. Well, it turns out, we didn't know this at the time, that invoices could have over 20,000 lines each. And that is because they may do multiple orders for a given customer location every day. And so they're restocking these items at these various locations. And a customer may have 20 locations. So that's 40 orders per day times 20 days, business days in a month, potentially 800 orders during the month. And all of those line items, up to 200 line items per order, all pushed into a single invoice at the end of the month. So when we did the math, we're like, whoa, 20 plus thousand lines. Despite months of discussions, that number never came up. So we said, okay, how do we deal with this? Over 3 hours was just untenable. Now, fortunately, we came up with some clever workarounds. We were able to modify the overall order to invoice process, eliminate several steps in BC, and also create a pretty clever customization to consolidate those order lines into distinct items on an invoice. And we brought down the invoicing process from 3 hours to less than 5 minutes. And thankfully, we were able to modify the overall process in Business Central. If we wouldn't have been able to eliminate some of those steps in the BC process, it would have been interesting. But we were able to eliminate those, just greatly streamline the process and get down to less than 5 minutes to process over 20,000 order lines. So the moral of this story is that sometimes, despite your best effort, your scoping, your investigation, your research, your requirements, your design and initial testing, you may run into capacity or performance issues that are unexpected. And what was really interesting about this is the customer says, well, it's taking this long. Well, we tested on Docker. Docker on a laptop took less than 5 minutes for 50,000 lines on an invoice. We have a tool that can generate any number of lines we want on an invoice. We perform the exact same steps on Docker, less than 5 minutes. So Docker, we realized, okay, we would have thought it would have been slow. It was extremely fast. We did not have the performance issues. We simply couldn't replicate it. And so something about their environment, their setup, the SaaS environment, whatever, the performance just wasn't there for that particular type of volume. So we now have different tools to try and test that, to accommodate it. And we now walk into this a little wary, saying, okay, where might we have performance issues? So related to this, I mentioned this story because coincidentally, at DynamicsCon Live on May 14th, Tuesday, I and my friend David Wheat, great guy. If you haven't seen him at a conference, you are truly missing out. So come to DynamicsCon Live in May in Denver and come check us out on Tuesday, May 14th. We are going to talk about exploring the capacity limits of Business Central Online. And this is not an exhaustive coverage of all possible angles, but we want to talk about things like this, like, hey, just be aware when you start touching the edges, the edge conditions, the boundary conditions, the edge cases, You might run into scenarios where Business Central Online has some constraints, whether it's a technical constraint, a licensing constraint, just a performance constraint. You need to be aware of this possibility and be ready to kind of adapt something to address it. Sometimes you might be able to make a change to a business process, do a customization. Sometimes it might be a support ticket for something environment specific or tenant specific. But we just want to talk about these potential issues so that you're not surprised when you walk into a Business Central implementation thinking, oh, I'm not going to have performance issues. Or maybe you just didn't even consider it. And then you realize you need to pull in 10,000 transactions a day via API and realize you have a potential performance issues. How do you address those things? So come visit us for that session. Okay, I'll try not to cough this time. On July 29th, 2023, I did a live stream. And in this live stream, it may not look like it, but I was very, very stressed. I've been doing these live streams for a couple years now, and I was super stressed during this live stream because I was officially announcing this crazy project called ERP Center of Excellence for Latin America, where I was going to naively, on my own, single-handedly develop world-class Business Central training and certification for the entire Latin American region. And I thought I had a plan. I thought I knew how I was going to accomplish this, but I was pretty nervous about this and had some late nights where I couldn't sleep, wondering how I was going to pull this off. Well, through just unbelievable sequences of events, persistence, and sheer luck, I have been extraordinarily fortunate in this program. And it has gone very, very well. I'm just blown away by how fortunate I have been to be successful so far in this. And it started in part with my business partner, Tanya Henderson, being willing to join me in this crazy, crazy journey and not think I'm completely insane. And in just 6 months, as of January 2024, we now have an official office in El Salvador for ERP Center of Excellence. And here we are in Berlin, El Salvador, with our freshly painted brand new building. Literally, the paint was still drying, still cleaning up and construction on the building. And it is a really nice facility. It is a community center in the city of Berlin. We partnered with a community organization in the city of Berlin who's looking to revitalize and grow the city, bring talent and businesses and jobs to the city. So they have been a great partner and been very, very helpful in welcoming us. And they're a nonprofit, non-governmental organization. And so we have partnered with them. We now have an office and we have this beautiful facility there. It's just sunny and bright and open and airy. And there is an adjoining room next to our office that will be a large training room. And so this probably can fit 20 plus people. And so there will be a large TV there, desks, we have laptops there. We brought a bunch of computers with us down there. So we will be able to host training sessions, in-person Business Central and related training in Berlin, El Salvador. So it has been a fantastic journey. I'm amazed at the progress we made in 6 months. And in addition to having an office and a nearby training facility, 10 feet from our office, and a group of people helping us make this happen, we have 3 candidates for the ERP Center of Excellence program. And so from left to right, we have Enrique, Vanya, and Gerardo. And through just meeting them and putting the word out about the program and talking with a bunch of people throughout El Salvador. They will be our first candidates going through the program. Enrique is starting with an intensive English Academy program that ERP Center of Excellence is sponsoring. And that program is 10 months. So he'll be doing an intensive English learning program for 10 months, and then we'll see how that goes, how good that program is, and then potentially have him do an English-speaking job for up to a year to really immerse himself, and then join us for the program. And simultaneously, he will be able to train in to learn programming to become a Business Central developer. So that's what he's interested in doing. So we're making that happen. And Vanya, she happens to have years of experience in the logistics and transportation industry working for U.S. companies. Just pure coincidence. So we are implementing Business Central for a transportation and logistics company. So she is now instantly getting pulled into our Business Central implementation right away. This was just pure coincidence. And so she will be doing on-the-job training, hitting the ground running, helping to implement Business Central for this customer. So that was just a fantastic coincidence. She knows all the companies, all the players, the logistics and transportation systems that are used in the industry. So that was just absolutely amazing that we made that connection. And then on the far right there is Gerardo, and he is going to focus on Power BI development. And we do a lot of Power BI work for customers in the United States. So he is starting the Power BI training program, and he will hopefully within a couple weeks, couple months, he will be ready to start working on some Power BI reports for Business Central customers. So all of them are off to the races, learning about Dynamics, Business Central, related technologies, and Vanya and Gerardo are going to quickly get hands-on work in the Business Central world. So it has been unbelievable. We are now searching for a fourth candidate in the city of Berlin area. And depending on their English level, they'll either start in the English Academy or depending on how many people we find, if they have strong English already, they may jump into one of the roles that we have available for training. Speaking of which, this has kind of grown very quickly. And 6 months ago, I was just thinking Business Central application consultant training. Like I just had a pretty small focus. That's all I could imagine at the time. But it turns out that we have a need for additional roles. So we assume others have a need for these roles as well. So we are expanding our training program to include not only application consultant for Business Central, but Business Central developer. We are getting repeated requests for PTEs. And, sometimes we can use Eric Hogarth's Simple Object Designer to add a few fields, but sometimes, like that invoicing example, we need something more complex that's, intervening in a business process, doing consolidation, doing something a little unusual. In that case, we need a PTE. Certain custom reports, things like that. And so we need a Business Central developer. So I'm assuming if you're a partner or perhaps a customer, you might need Business Central development assistance as well. So we added that on. And then we have a pile of Power BI reports we need to get done for our Business Central customers. So we said, hey, well, why don't we expand this to include Power BI developer? So Gerardo's jumping into that learning program. So this is what we're thinking at the moment. We are also considering adding Power Platform, so Power Automate and Power Apps to the training program as well. So it is quickly expanding. We have a lot of work to do on curriculum, but we're moving as fast as we can. And so what do these career paths look like? Tentative, but I was just trying to kind of understand the paths, the timeline, and how this might work. This is not a 1 week, 2 week, 4 week program. This is a multi-year investment for each of these candidates. So People who need to improve their English, they will do 10 months of English Academy, very intensive daily training with an English Academy. That this is what they do. It's based out of El Salvador, and they train people in English. They provide English training for the call centers. There are just thousands of English call center jobs in El Salvador. So this is a well-known market. They've been doing this for many, many years, and they have a pretty good system. So English Academy can feed into English call center jobs that provide full-time immersion in an English-speaking job that pays quite well for the area and helps people or forces people to learn English and become fluent. So we're working on testing that path for people who want to learn English and become fluent and proficient. And I'm investigating other programs to help with American accent, because sometimes even though someone speaks perfectly technically accurate English, if they do not speak with an American accent, it can sometimes hinder the communication between them and customers in the U.S. I've observed that in many cases, and I even work with people in the U.S. who have strong accents that even I have a hard time understanding. So it's not due to physical location or geography. It's just the American accent has certain quirks that non-native speakers wouldn't normally have, because their language just doesn't include these American sounds. So I am learning that the American language has a lot of strange quirks and oddities besides vocabulary, besides grammar. Just the way we pronounce words, the way we string words in sentences is truly bizarre if you start to watch the technical videos. So there is training program for that as well. And of course, we'll have all sorts of soft skills, typing, so 60 words per minute minimum typing, Microsoft Office, soft skills like job interviews and product demos and just presentation skills, public speaking. We'll have social media, so they get used to interacting with social media accounts, being part of the BC community online. They will be teaching. Once they learn this stuff, get the training, they will be teaching other people in the program and helping those students learn Business Central, application development, and Power BI. And personal brand building, so that they are a recognized resource in their community. They will become an expert. So we want the community to know who they are. And then they will choose a career path, whether that's Business Central application consultant or Power BI developer or Business Central developer. We'll be building entire training paths that will include kind of formal academic training, such as accounting and accounting terminology, or basic programming concepts for someone who has never done programming before, on to the more specific, such as Business Central training or AL training or Power BI training. And then, in order to give them work experience, hands-on, real-world experience, they will have full-on working internships where they will do real customer work, deliverables, project implementations, PTEs, Power BI reports, you name it. All of this will be real work once they are up to speed and able to use the tools that are provided. And then, when they're ready, they'll have the opportunity to get our endorsement, get certifications of the training program, and interview. So if you are interested, if you are looking for application consultants, Business Central developers, Power BI developers, any Business Central resources, let me know. We'd be happy to find candidates, train them, and have them interview with you. And you can let us know if we're doing a good job. But my goal is to provide the best training in the world. And this is going to be world-class, and Tanya and I will be the judges of their performance. And this will be real-world implementation. So this is not just an academic training program. And so if you're interested in learning more, we don't yet post a lot online because obviously we're building, but you can follow us at ERP Excellence on Twitter. And so we posted a few times about our journey, what we're doing, our office, Berlin, things like that. And as the candidates progress, we'll be posting about that. They're learning, they will be posting, sharing their knowledge and learning as well. So we're going to have a great time, so come check it out. And Berlin, Berlin, El Salvador. It is a small town on the side of a volcano, among a range of volcanoes in the region, in the Usulatan area of El Salvador. And it is a beautiful, quaint, semi-rustic little town. Has some very modern, cosmopolitan elements, but then it has some very basic and rustic charm, shall we say. So it is quite an interesting little town, but it is very quaint, beautiful, peaceful little town. Has some really neat stuff there. So we had a great time there. We worked on the balcony of our modest hotel, second story balcony, just gorgeous mornings working out there, beautiful weather. And I think the pupusas in Berlin at the town square at the center of town at the park are fantastic. So every evening, especially Sunday evenings is the big night, you can go out there, you buy pupusas for 50 cents each. Two of them makes a meal, and they are absolutely fantastic. I just love them. Whole street of food vendors there and shops and merchants. So we had a great time. And this was our afternoon snack one day, coffee and chocolate cake at a cafe, beautiful coffee shop. And that iced coffee on the right there kept me up. We had that at 2 p.m., kept me up till 1 a.m. So the coffee packs a punch. Speaking of coffee, to wrap things up, I need coffee, and 2 coffee recommendations for this live stream are thegoodbeans.com. So this is a coffee shop in San Salvador, and I'll talk more about that, and then passengercoffee.com. So my current espresso setup is a little Breville, I think it's called a Bambino Plus, and this is one without a grinder, and it is actually really good. Don't let the smaller size fool you. It actually, I think, has better capabilities than the larger Barista Express style line of the Breville lineup. It does not have the grinder, which is not the greatest in the world, the included grinders. So that's the Breville Bambino Plus. Great little, low volume espresso machine for the home. And this is the Eureka Mignon Solo. And so it's a single dose coffee grinder for espresso. Works fantastic, vastly better than an integrated grinder of the Breville, and really, really good espresso grinder in my humble opinion. It's not, a $3,000 grinder, but it is fantastic. And regarding coffee, this is Gabe, and he is the owner of Good Beans El Salvador. So if you're looking for some great, really high-end third wave specialty coffee, he is a hardcore coffee roaster. He meets with the growers. He knows the processing facilities. He is literally hand picking the coffee from cherry to processing to bean, green bean to he does the roasting, and he bags it up, everything from A to Z. So he definitely knows his stuff. I visited his coffee shop in San Salvador, and I am a huge fan of his house coffee. This is a semi-washed, I believe is what he calls it, and it's the Toragos house roast. And that is the national bird of El Salvador, Toragos, and fantastic coffee. Really, really good. I highly recommend it. And he does ship to the US. And basically, even including shipping to the US, it's potentially the same or slightly less than buying my current favorite espresso brew from Passenger Coffee, which is now getting over $20 a bag. So he's able to sell and ship to the United States very competitively to U.S. roasters. So if you're interested in 2 great coffees, I check out the Good Beans and Passenger Coffee. And so with that, I hope that was useful, informative, interesting. So, go learn something. And go check out Natalie on Twitter, our BC Docs librarian. Go check out API resources, including Jeremy's book, and go register for a conference and have some good coffee. Okay, Talk to you later.